Day 94, 1 Kings 8 through 11. The dedication of the temple and Solomon's death. 8. The ark brought to the temple, Solomon's prayer of dedication. The dedication of the temple. 9. The Lord appears to Solomon, Solomon's other activities. 10. The Queen of Sheba visits Solomon, Solomon's splendor. 11. Solomon's wives, Solomon's adversaries. Jeroboam rebels against Solomon, Solomon's death. Point ponder. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's vast wealth and wisdom, she had to learn firsthand if the report were true. Notice what she concluded. Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighted in thee, because the Lord loved Israel forever, therefore made he thee king. Chapter 10, verse 9. Rather than absorbing the glory for himself, Solomon had become a reflector of God's glory. When others saw the king's greatness, they gave glory not to the king, but to the King of Kings.
Chapter 8. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, and all the heads of the tribes, the princes of the fathers' houses of the children of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. All the men of Israel assembled themselves to King Solomon at the feast, in the month Ethanim, which is the 7th month. All the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. They brought the ark of the Lord, in the tent of meeting, and all the vessels that were in the tent, even these did the priests and the Levites bring up. King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel, who were assembled to him, were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be counted nor numbered for multitude. The priests brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place, into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and the poles of it above. The poles were long, so that the ends of the poles were seen from the holy place before the oracle, but they were not seen outside, and they are there to this day. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone, which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel, when they came out of the land of Egypt. It came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon spoke. The Lord has said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built you a house of habitation, a place for you to dwell forever. The king turned his face about, and blessed all the assembly of Israel, and all the assembly of Israel stood. He said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who spoke with his mouth to David your father, and has with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to build a house, that my name might be there, but I chose David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to David my father, Whereas it was in your heart to build a house for my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless you shall not build the house, but your son who shall come forth out of your loins, he shall build the house for my name. The Lord has established his word that he spoke. For I have risen up in the place of David my father, and sit on the throne of Israel as the Lord promised, and have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. There I have set a place for the ark, in which is the covenant of the Lord, which he made with our fathers, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord, in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread forth his hands towards heaven, and he said, O Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you, in heaven above, or on earth beneath, who keeps covenant and loving kindness with your servants, who walk before you with all their heart. You have kept with your servant David my father that which you did promise him. Yes, you spoke with your mouth, and have fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, O Lord, God of Israel, keep with your servant David my father that which you have promised him, saying, There shall not fail you a man in my sight, to sit on the throne of Israel, if only your children take heed to their way, to walk before me, as you have walked before me. Now therefore, God of Israel, please let your words be verified which you spoke to your servant David my father. But will God in very deed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens can't contain you, how much less this house that I have built. Yet have respect for the prayer of your servant, and for his supplication, O Lord my God, to listen to the cry, and to the prayer which your servant prays before you this day, that your eyes may be open toward this house night and day, even toward the place of which you have said, My name shall be there, to listen to the prayer which your servant shall pray towards this place. Listen to the supplication of your servant, and of your people Israel, when they shall pray toward this place. Yes, hear in heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. If a man sins against his neighbor, and an oath be laid on him to cause him to swear, and he come, and swear before you in the altar in this house, then hear in heaven and do, and judge your servants, condemning the wicked, to bring his way on his own head, and justifying the righteous, to give him according to his righteousness. When your people Israel are struck down before the enemy, because they have sinned against you, if they turn again to you, and confess your name, and pray, and make supplication to you in this house, then hear from heaven, and forgive the sin of your people Israel, and bring them again to the land which you gave their fathers. When the sky is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against you, if they pray toward this place, and confess your name, and turn from their sin, when you do afflict them, then hear in heaven, and forgive the sin of your servants and of your people Israel, when you teach them the good way in which they should walk, and send rain on your land, which you have given to your people for an inheritance. If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, if there be blasting or mildew, locust or caterpillar, if their enemy besiege them in the land of their cities, whatever plague, whatever sickness there be, whatever prayer and supplication be made by any man, or by all your people Israel, who shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hand toward his house, then please hear in heaven your dwelling place, and forgive, and do and render to every man according to all his ways, whose heart you know. For you, even only you, know the hearts of all the children of men, that they may fear you all the days that they live in them which you gave to our fathers. Moreover, concerning the foreigner, who is not of your people Israel, when he shall come out of a far country for your name's sake, for they shall hear of your great name, and of your mighty hand, and of your outstretched arm, when he shall come and pray toward his house, hear in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all that the foreigner calls to you for, that all the peoples of the earth may know your name to fear you, as does your people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have built is called by your name. If your people go out to battle against their enemy, by whatever way you shall send them, and they pray to the Lord toward the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name, then hear in heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. If they sin against you, for there is no man who doesn't sin, and you are angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captive to the land of the enemy, far off or near, yet if they shall repent themselves in the land where they are carried captive, and turn again, and make supplication to you in the land of those who carried them captive, saying, We have sinned, and done perversely, we have dealt wickedly, if they return to you with all their heart, and with all their soul in the land of their enemies, who carried them captive, and pray to you toward their land which you gave to their fathers, the city which you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name, then hear their prayer and their supplication in heaven your dwelling place, and maintain their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you, and all their transgressions in which they have transgressed against you, and give them compassion before those who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they are your people, and your inheritance, which you brought forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that your eyes may be open to the supplication of your servant, and to the supplication of your people Israel, to listen to them whenever they cry to you. For you did separate them from among all the peoples of the earth to be your inheritance, as you spoke by Moses your servant, when you brought our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord God. It was so, that when Solomon had made an end of praying all this prayer and supplication to the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread forth toward heaven. He stood, and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, according to all that he promised. There has not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by Moses his servant. The Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. Let him not leave us nor forsake us, that he may incline our hearts to him, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his ordinances, which he commanded our fathers. Let these my words, with which I have made supplication before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he maintain the cause of his servant, and the cause of his people Israel, as every day shall require, that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord, he is God, there is none else. Let your heart therefore be perfect with the Lord our God, to walk in his statutes, and to keep his commandments as at this day. The king, and all Israel with him, offered sacrifices before the Lord. Solomon offered for the sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered to the Lord, 22,000 oxen, and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. The same day did the king make the middle of the court holy, that was before the house of the Lord. For there he offered the burnt offering, and the meal offering, and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar that was before the Lord was too little to receive the burnt offering, and the meal offering, and the fat of the peace offerings. So Solomon held a feast at that time, and all Israel with him, a great assembly, from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of Egypt, before the Lord our God, 7 days, and 7 days, even 14 days. On the 8th day he sent the people away, and they blessed the king, and went to their tents joyful and glad of heart, for all the goodness that the Lord had shown to David his servant, and to his people Israel. Chapter 9. It happened, when Solomon had finished the building of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all Solomon's desire which he was pleased to do, that the Lord appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your supplication that you have made before me. I have made this house holy which you have built, to put my name there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. As for you, If you will walk before me as David your father walked, in integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I have commanded you, and will keep my statutes and my ordinances, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, according as I promised to David your father, saying, There shall not fail you a man on the throne of Israel. But if you shall turn away from following me, you or your children, and not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, but shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them, and this house, which I have made holy for my name, I will cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all peoples. Though this house is so high, yet every one who passes by it will be astonished, and shall hiss, and they will say, Why has the Lord done this to this land and to this house? And they shall answer, Because they forsook the Lord their God, who brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them, and served them. Therefore has the Lord brought all this evil on them. It happened at the end of 20 years, in which Solomon had built the 2 houses, the house of the Lord, and the king's house. Now Hiram the king of Tyre had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees, and with gold, according to all his desire. Then King Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they didn't please him. He said, What cities are these which you have given me, my brother? He called them the land of Cabul to this day. Hiram sent to the king 120 talents of gold. This is the reason of the levy which King Solomon raised, to build the house of the Lord, and his own house, and Milo, and the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, and Megiddo, and Gezer. Pharaoh king of Egypt had gone up and taken Gezer, and burnt it with fire, and slain the Canaanites who lived in the city, and given it for a portion to his daughter, Solomon's wife. Solomon built Gezer, and Beth-horon the lower, and Baalath, and Tamar in the wilderness in the land, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and the cities for his chariots, and the cities for his horsemen, and that which Solomon desired to build for his pleasure in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and all the land of his dominion. As for all the people who were left of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not of the children of Israel, their children who were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel were not able to utterly destroy, of them did Solomon raise a levy of bondservants to this day. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondservants, but they were the men of war, and his servants, and his princes, and his captains, and rulers of his chariots and of his horsemen. These were the chief officers who were over Solomon's work, 550, who bore rule over the people who labored in the work. But Pharaoh's daughter came up out of the city of David to her house which Solomon had built for her. Then he also built up Milo. 3 times a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings on the altar which he built to the Lord, burning incense on the altar that was before the Lord. So he finished the house. King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion-Geber, which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. Hiram sent in the navy, his servants, sailors who had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. They came to Ophir and fetched from there gold, 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon. Chapter 10. When the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bore spices and very much gold, and precious stones, and when she was come to Solomon, she talked with him of all that was in her heart. Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hidden from the king which he didn't tell her. When the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the food of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their clothing, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. She said to the king, It was a true report that I heard in my own land of your acts and of your wisdom. However, I didn't believe the words until I came, and my eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame which I heard. Happy are your men. Happy are these your servants who stand continually before you, and who hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, to set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore he made you king, to do justice and righteousness. She gave the king 120 talents of gold, and a very large amount of spices and precious stones. There came no more again such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The navy also of Hiram, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great quantities of almug trees and precious stones. The king made of the almug trees pillars for the house of the Lord, and for the king's house, harps also and psalteries for the singers. There came no such almug trees, nor were they ever seen again to this day. King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatever she asked, besides that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned, and went to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, besides that which the traders brought, and the traffic of the merchants, and of all the kings of the mixed people, and of the governors of the country. King Solomon made 200 bucklers of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to 1 buckler. He made 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 minas of gold went to 1 shield, and the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, and overlaid it with the finest gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and the top of the throne was round behind, and there were stays on either side by the place of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the stays. 12 lions stood there on the one side, and on the other, on the 6 steps, There was nothing like it made in any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was accounted for nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had to see a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once every 3 years the navy came of Tarshish, bringing gold, and silver, ivory, and apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. All the earth sought the presence of Solomon, to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. Every man brought his tribute, vessels of silver, and vessels of gold, and clothing, and armor, and spices, horses, and mules, at a set rate year by year. Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, that he kept in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. The king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones, and cedars he made to be as the sycamore trees that are in the lowland for abundance. The horses which Solomon had were brought out of Egypt, and the king's merchants received them in quantities, each quantity at a price. A chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150, and so for all the kings of the Hittites, and for the kings of Syria did they bring them out by their means. Chapter 11. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said to the children of Israel, You shall not go among them, neither shall they come among you, for surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Solomon joined to these in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it happened when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and didn't go fully after the Lord as David his father did. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the mountain that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. So he did for all his foreign wives, who burnt incense and sacrificed to their gods. The Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he didn't keep that which the Lord commanded. Therefore the Lord said to Solomon, Because this is done of you, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you, and will give it to your servant. Nevertheless, in your days I will not do it, for David your father's sake, but I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake which I have chosen. The Lord raised up an adversary to Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. For it happened when David was in Edom, and Joab the captain of the host was gone up to bury the slain, and had struck every male in Edom. For Joab and all Israel remained there 6 months, until he had cut off every male in Edom, that Hadad had fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, Hadad being yet a little child. They arose out of Midian and came to Paran, and they took men with them out of Paran, and they came to Egypt, to Pharaoh king of Egypt, who gave him a house, and appointed him food, and gave him land. Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave him his wife, the sister of his own wife, the sister of Tahpenes the queen. The sister of Tahpenes bore him Genubath his son, whom Tahpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house, and Genubath was in Pharaoh's house among the sons of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab the captain of the host was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, Let me depart, that I may go into my own country. Then Pharaoh said to him, But what have you lacked with me, that you seek to go to your own country? He answered nothing, But please let me depart. God raised up another adversary to Solomon, Rezon the son of Eliada, who had fled from his lord Hadadezer king of Zobah. He gathered men to him and became captain over a troop, when David killed them of Zobah, and they went to Damascus and lived there, and reigned in Damascus. He was an adversary to Israel all the days of Solomon, besides the mischief that Hadad did, and he abhorred Israel and reigned over Syria. Jeroboam the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite, of Zeradah, a servant of Solomon, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow, he also lifted up his hand against the king. This was the reason why he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Milo, and repaired the breach of the city of David his father. The man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon saw the young man that he was industrious, and gave him charge over all the labor of the house of Joseph. It happened at that time, when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way. Now Ahijah had clothed himself with a new garment, and the two were alone in the field. Ahijah laid hold of the new garment that was on him, and tore it in 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, Take 10 pieces, for thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, Behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to you. But he shall have 1 tribe, for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Because that they have forsaken me, and have worshipped Ashtoreth the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh the god of Moab, and Milcom the god of the children of Ammon, and they have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in my eyes, and to keep my statutes and my ordinances, as David his father did. However, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life, for David my servant's sake whom I chose, who kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hands, and will give it to you, even 10 tribes. To his son I will give 1 tribe, that David my servant may have a lamp always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen to me to put my name there. I will take you, and you shall reign according to all that your soul desires, and shall be king over Israel. It shall be, if you will listen to all that I command you, and will walk in my ways, and do that which is right in my eyes to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with you, and will build you a sure house as I built for David, and will give Israel to you. I will afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt, to Shishak king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, and all that he did in his wisdom, aren't they written in the book of the acts of Solomon? The time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his place.